My name is Teresa. I'm sitting on my porch, looking back on the past year, and the memories flood my mind. It all started when I discovered I'd won the lottery, a life-changing event that tested the true nature of my family relationships. A year ago, I found myself in a small, sunlit home with a garden I loved tending to every morning. It was just a short walk from my Aunt Iris's newly paid-for bungalow. Iris, an elderly woman in her 70s, had always been the one bright spot in my family. She lived a simple life, still working part-time at the local library to make ends meet. I remembered the day when the house was filled with my family members. My mother, Cassandra, a 55-year-old woman who was always calm looking on the surface but actually quite self-centered, sat on the couch with my stepfather, Richard. Richard, 58, was a no-nonsense man who believed everyone should be financially independent. My father, Edward, a very practical and somewhat strict 56-year-old, was seated by the window with his wife, Lillian. Lillian, 53, was constantly judgmental and always seemed to know what was best for everyone. My older brother, Marcus, 28, a bit of a free spirit who never took his responsibilities seriously, lingered near the kitchen. My younger sister, Maya, 24, with her arms crossed, looked a bit uncomfortable. And my cousin, Lucas, 26, was leaning against the wall, scrolling through his phone. I started the meeting by saying, "Thank you for coming. I wanted to clear up a few things. I'm fine. I've accepted a better paying position with great benefits, and I'll be transitioning next month." I saw relief flash across some of their faces, as if they were worried I'd ask for money again. But I continued, "When I thought I was in trouble, I reached out to you, and your responses told me a lot about where I stand in this family." Cassandra glanced at Richard and then back at me. "We all have our own financial commitments, Teresa. It's not always possible to help." Edward took on his familiar lecturing tone. "You can't expect others to solve your problems. That's not how life works." Maya shifted uneasily. "I offered you a place to stay. That counts for something." Marcus didn't even look up from the floor. "I was dealing with my own stuff." I'd heard these excuses before, but this time, I didn't let it slide. "I'm not here to argue. I just want to be clear. Those days when I emptied my savings to bail someone out, they're over. I'm done being the family's safety net." The silence that followed was thick, but I felt no fear. When the meeting broke up, most left without meeting my eyes. Only Iris stayed behind, helping me stack the coffee cups in the sink. Her quiet presence was a constant reminder of why I'd done this. Let me take you back to how it all began. I was living a simple life in a one-bedroom apartment. The rent was a huge chunk of my paycheck, and I had to be extremely frugal with my money. Every day started at 6 a.m. with the sound of my alarm. I'd brew coffee on autopilot and quickly check my budget app before heading to the office. It was my birthday, and like every Friday, I stopped at the gas station on the corner to buy my weekly lottery ticket. Usually, I'd spend $10, but this time, I splurged and slid $20 across the counter. "Birthday treat," I told the clerk, half joking and half hoping. He smiled, printed the tickets, and wished me luck. That evening, I celebrated alone with leftover Chinese takeout and a glass of boxed wine. As the TV murmured in the background, I scrolled through social media, looking at pictures of my friends having a great time, and I felt a bit envious. Around 9 p.m. I remembered the tickets lying on the kitchen counter. I pulled them towards me and opened the lottery website on my phone. My heart started pounding as the first number matched, then the second, and my breath caught at the third. By the time I matched all 6 numbers, my hands were shaking so badly that I had to put the phone down. I'd won $1,400,000 after taxes, more money than I could earn in a decade. I stared at the screen, expecting a rush of joy, but instead, a chill went down my spine. I'd read so many stories about lottery winners whose lives fell apart because of other people's expectations. I knew my family well. They always remembered when someone had money. I just knew how fast the news would spread and how every conversation would revolve around what I could do for them. So, I closed the browser, carefully folded the ticket, and tucked it deep into my desk drawer. I decided not to tell anyone, not my parents, not my siblings, and not even my closest friend. Not yet, and maybe not ever. The next morning, I woke up strangely calm. The money was mine, but the real challenge was to keep it. I thought about my family's past behavior. 3 years ago, Cassandra called me saying there was a leak in the attic of their house. She promised to pay me back as soon as Richard closed a big business deal. I wired her $3,000 the same day. But the next month, instead of repayment, I received pictures of them on a cruise in the Caribbean. The topic of the money was never mentioned again. Marcus was even worse. His requests always came with a lot of drama, like urgent bills for his latest party-related mess or car trouble after a wild night out. I'd send him money whenever I could, sometimes emptying my savings, only to see him post pictures of himself at expensive concerts on social media. When I confronted him once, he just laughed it off, saying I was too uptight. Maya's turn came when she got married. She promised to pay back the $2,000 I put on my credit card for her wedding decorations as soon as the wedding was over. 5 years later, she still hadn't paid me back, always coming up with excuses about her growing family and unexpected expenses. In contrast, Iris was always there for me. She lived in a small bungalow and drove an old car. Even with her limited income, she'd give me $20 when she heard my car needed repairs or bake me pies when I was swamped with work. Her help was never about the amount of money but the love and care behind it. As I stared at the winning ticket, those memories became crystal clear. I knew I had to be careful. 2 days later, I drove to Seattle to meet a financial advisor named Mr. Thompson. I found his name through a referral from someone who valued privacy. His office was on the top floor of a downtown skyscraper, a place where everything looked sleek and professional. Mr. Thompson greeted me with a warm handshake. After I slid the ticket across his desk, his eyes flicked over the numbers, and a slight raise of his eyebrows showed his surprise before he quickly regained his calm, professional demeanor. We spent 2 hours discussing a detailed plan. He explained how a revocable trust could claim the winnings on my behalf, ensuring my name wouldn't be in public records. We also planned to spread the funds across multiple low-risk investment accounts and set aside a small liquid account for my daily needs. When I asked about common mistakes lottery winners made, he said without hesitation, the fastest way to lose your peace is to tell the wrong person. Once you do, things will never be the same. I nodded, understanding that keeping quiet was not only about protecting the money but also about protecting myself from the loss of trust. Driving home, I realized my outer life couldn't change yet. I still had to go to work every morning, shop at the grocery store during sales, and drive my old, dented car. The win was real, but I needed to know who I could truly trust. That's when I came up with the idea of creating a crisis. I decided to ask for $5,000, an amount that would be significant but not impossible for those who really cared. I'd tell them that my company had shut down suddenly after losing a major client, my severance wouldn't come for weeks, and recent medical bills had wiped out my savings. I needed help with rent and utilities until I found a new job. I started to doubt myself. Was this manipulative? Was I setting them up to fail? But I told myself it was about self-protection. If they couldn't help me when I was supposedly in trouble, how could I trust them if they knew I was a millionaire? I drafted a script, researching recent corporate closures to make my story believable. I practiced sounding tired but not desperate, leaving enough room for them to make a choice without feeling pressured. I wrote down the names of my family members in a notebook: Cassandra, Richard, Edward, Lillian, Marcus, Maya, Lucas, and Iris. Beside each name, I made predictions. Cassandra might offer a small amount but then suggest I ask someone else. Richard would flat out say no. Edward would lecture me and offer no money. Lillian would be judgmental and say no. Marcus would disappear. Maya would offer sympathy but no cash. Lucas would promise to help and then disappear. Iris, I knew, would give what she could even if it was less than I asked. Looking at the list, I felt a knot in my chest. This was my family, reduced to a list of expected refusals. But I knew I had to face the truth, so I decided to start making the calls the next day. I started with Cassandra. She answered the phone brightly on the second ring. I eased into my story, describing the company's closure, the severance delay, and the medical bills. She gasped at the right places, and her tone softened as I spoke. But when I told her I needed $5,000, her voice changed. Oh, Teresa, I wish I could help, but Richard and I just invested in a new business venture. Things are tight right now. Have you tried asking Edward? The gentle rejection hurt more than an outright no, but I thanked her and hung up. Next was Edward. His greeting was brusque, as if he suspected I wanted something. I told him the same story, but his face, in my mind, remained unchanged. When I asked for help, he launched into a lecture. Teresa, this is exactly why I've always told you to save 6 months of expenses. What happened to your plan? I explained about the medical bills and rent, but it was useless. I'd love to help, but Lillian and I are saving for a trip. You need to learn from this. His words were like a slap in the face. When I called Maya, I was already prepared for disappointment. She sounded warm at first and showed sympathy when I told her the news. But then she said, we just bought a new house, and there are so many expenses. Phil is really strict with the budget. But you can come and stay with us for a while. We can clear out the guest room. It was an offer, but not the one I needed. I thanked her and said I needed to stay in the city for job interviews. Marcus was a no-show. I texted him first, saying I needed to talk, but there was no reply. I called him that evening, and it went straight to voicemail. I tried again the next day and sent a follow-up message, but there was only silence. By the end of the week, I stopped trying. Lillian didn't even let me finish my story. When I told her about my situation, she cut me off. I'm sorry, but the answer is no. You should learn to live within your means. Maybe you should get a roommate. I bit my tongue to stop myself from saying something I'd regret. Richard was incredibly blunt. As soon as I explained what I needed, he said, "You're not my responsibility. I've taken care of your mother, but your financial problems are yours. Maybe you should have chosen a more stable career." Lucas surprised me at first. He sounded very sympathetic on the phone and offered to meet me for lunch and give me a check. You've always been good to me, Teresa. I'll take care of you. I felt a glimmer of hope. But on the morning we were supposed to meet, he texted me an hour before, saying something had come up and we should reschedule. After that, my calls went unanswered. The pattern was clear. Those who had relied on me in the past disappeared when I needed help. And those who didn't just made excuses to justify not helping. But there was one person left, Iris. 2 days after I'd crossed everyone else's name off my list, my phone rang. It was Iris. Her voice was warm and direct. Teresa, honey, I just heard you've had some bad luck at work. Are you okay? I almost dropped my act but stuck to my script. She didn't ask for proof or details. Instead, she said, let's have lunch tomorrow. My treat. We met at a small diner she loved, a place with old-fashioned decor and delicious pies. After we finished eating, she reached into her purse and pulled out a plain white envelope. I want you to take this, she said, sliding it across the table. Inside was a stack of bills, $3,000. I stared at it, my throat tightening. Iris, I can't take this. It's too much. She said firmly, it's not the full amount you need, I know, but it'll help with rent. And if you need a place to stay, my couch is yours. Her words were like a warm blanket on a cold day. I thought about the others and their excuses, and the contrast was overwhelming. She had so little, yet she was giving me almost everything she could. I slipped the envelope into my bag, promising to pay her back. The guilt and gratitude burned inside me. That evening, I asked Iris to come over for tea. When she sat on my couch, holding a warm mug, I knew I couldn't keep the secret from her anymore. I need to tell you something. I didn't lose my job. The whole story was a test. I wanted to see who in the family would help me. And you were the only one. I took a deep breath and continued, 3 weeks ago, I won the lottery, $1,400,000. You're the first person I've told. Iris didn't look shocked, instead, she looked thoughtful. After a long sip of tea, she said, I understand why you did it, but I'm sad you felt you had to. Years ago, I inherited $50,000 from my aunt. Your cousin convinced me to invest in his friend's startup. He said it was a sure thing. But within a year, it failed, and I lost all my money. He said it was a shared risk, and I had no right to be mad. That's when I learned money shows who people are and also who you become. Her words hit home. I realized she was right. This win could make me a cold and suspicious person or a generous and deliberate one. I decided right then that I'd make sure Iris never had to worry about money again, in a way that would maintain her dignity. A year has passed since then. My life has changed in all the best ways. I'm still actively involved in the nonprofit I founded, helping isolated seniors. My contact with the rest of my family is cordial but not deep. I sometimes help them anonymously, like paying a hospital bill here or a debt there. They never know it's me, and I prefer it that way. Sitting on the porch with Iris as the light fades over our shared neighborhood, she squeezes my hand and says, "We did good, kiddo." And I smile, knowing that the real treasures in life aren't measured in dollars.